Hey, it's your girl Maya. So I just want to share what I learned from reading First Samuel chapter 25. And it is the account of David and Abigail. Abigail eventually becomes David's wife. But Abigail is originally married to a man named Nabal. Nabal name means stupid or foolish man, foul person. And Abigail's name means a source of joy. Now, these names are important because I'm speaking about the character because the title of this would be Your Character is Priceless. Now, I say priceless because Nabal was considered a very rich man, but that's all he really had going for himself. The Bible describes him as a harsh man, a foolish man, and the Hebrew word for harsh, and I got that word from the ESV version. It says it's kashal. Hebrews word from the Strong Concordance 7186, and it's described as severe, cruel, grievous, hard, heavy, stubborn, stiff necked, hard hearted, sore, and there's a couple other words. And that describes the character of Nabal. So, yes, he was rich, but his character was poor. But on the opposite end, he was married to a woman named Abigail. Her name means a source of joy, and she was described as a woman of beautiful countenance and a discerning woman with good understanding and discretion. And the word discerning is the Hebrews word from the Strong Concordance Sekel H7922, and that word is described as intelligence, success, discretion, knowledge, policy, prudence, sense, understanding, wisdom, wise. And then discretion further um, described as judgment, reasoning, understanding, and decree, and that's from the Hebrew word uh, Tayom 2940 in the Strong Concordance. So, why am I talking about these characters? Because ultimately, it is Nabal's character that almost caused his whole house to be slaughtered by David and his men. But it was because of the wisdom and the good character of his wife where his house was saved. Not only was his house saved, there was a blessing um, reserved for her because of the blessing that she poured out on David and for the repentance um, that she requested on behalf of her husband, but she took full accountability of the behavior of her husband, even though she did not overhear this conversation. She did not meet the men that were disgustingly disgraced and dishonored by her husband Nabal. And so when we get to verse 10, Nabal's response to David's men was, Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants these days who are breaking away from their masters. Shall I take my bread and my water? Shall I take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers and give it to the men who come from I do not know where? And so we have to think about this is a very disrespectful response, especially when you're saying it to the people who have been protecting your property, your land, your people, and here we are in a feast time where you should have an abundance to share, and you are blatantly disrespectful, and especially since we know that David has been anointed to be king. But at this point, he's already a well-known warrior. Like he's already made a positive name for himself. And so here, this man is thinking because he's rich and he has everything he could ever want, that he has the audacity or the authority to be so dishonorable to the people that have been serving him. And so when the message gets back to David, he is livid. And why is he so upset? Because he has literally been running from his father in law. He just fought in a battle in chapter 23, Keilah, protecting them from the Philistines. And these same people betrayed him and gave up his position to his father in law. And so here we are, another situation where he has been protecting this man and his property, and he has the gall to dishonor him. And David is prepared to take vengeance in his own hands. And so when the message comes back to David, he takes 400 of his men and he's prepared to slaughter everybody in his house. And so when that means in his house, that means his servants, his people, his wife, anybody connected to Nabal, he was prepared to slaughter. So um, one of the men from Nabal's servants went back to Abigail, his wife, and he says to her, um, this is verse 14. But one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to greet our master, and he railed at them. Yet the men were very good to us, as we suffered no harm, and we did not miss anything when we were in the fields as long as we went with them. They were a wall to us both night and by day, all the while we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore know this and consider what you should do. For harm is determined against our master and against all his house, as he is such a worthless man that no one can speak to him. Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves of 2 skins of wine, and 5 sheep already prepared, and 5 seahs of parched grain, and 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on donkeys. And she said to her young men, go on before me, behold, I come after you. But she did not tell her husband Nabal. So far in this part, where we can see that Abigail was wise, she took it upon herself to act. She didn't wait until David and his men came to her household, came to her camp, and were already slaughtering her people. She made a wise decision to rectify the wrong her husband made, and also notice that some of these things were already prepared. She knew what was in her house. She knew what she could gather quickly, and she made a decision to go forward to rectify and to bring the provision that was originally requested. And so she could have said, well, my husband said no, I don't want to dishonor my husband, and they would all been dead. And so she also knew that her husband wasn't in a position to be able to hear the rebuttal or the plan that she came up with, so she decided to do this on her own. And so it gets to the point where she's with David and she says, behold, David and his men came down toward her. It came down to her and she met them. Now David said, surely in vain have I guarded all this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing has missed of all that belonged to him, and he has returned me evil for good. God do so to the enemies of David, and more also, if by morning I leave, so such as no one male of all who belongs to him. So basically, he is like kicking himself because he's like, I done, looked after this man and he can't even help me and my men out. Like, he's basically making a promise to God that by the morning, all these people will be no more. And so it says, um, when Abigail saw David, she hurried and got down from the donkey and fell before David on her face and bowed to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "On me alone, my Lord, be the guilt." So, though this was the guilt of her husband, she took full accountability for the actions of her husband. She admitted, yes, he was a fool for how he treated you, but not only did she take full responsibility for the actions of her husband, she decreed that he would not shed um, he would not shed innocent blood because of the foolish decision of her husband. And she was able to persuade David not to take vengeance in his hand and spill innocent blood on his hands because of what her husband did. And she was able to bless David. So not only did she take full responsibility and rectify the wrong that her husband caused for her household, but she also blessed the life of David. And so, therefore, everything that she decreed in speaking to David came to pass. So she saved her own life, she saved the other innocent lives of her household, and she also saved her husband's life. But her husband died because he was, you know, God took his life because of the dishonor to David. So God repaid David with the vengeance, and it didn't have David didn't have to take the vengeance into his own hand. But the very blessings that she prayed over David becomes her own blessing as well, because when her husband Nabal dies, David remembers her and he sends for her and he seeks her hand in marriage. She accepts, and so everything that she decreed for David also becomes her. So she's blessed doubly, triple really, because she's free from her husband, her foolish husband that was mean hearted. She is now honored to be the wife of the soon to be king, and she now has all this provision. She is well protected by a valiant warrior, and she's honored just for having good character, for having good wisdom, for having good discretion. And so, what can we learn from this? Regardless of who you are attached to, you are responsible for your character. How you treat people in this time frame and in the future matters. You do not know what your kindness could change for people. Would it change her just being a decent person, being wise, having humility, being able to repent on behalf of her husband, and decree blessings for the man who sought to kill all of her house because of the sins of her husband, blessed her. It blessed David because David still got the provision that he needed for himself and his men, but also he did not have to have innocent blood on his conscience, and it saved him from doing evil in the sight of the Lord. Also, the Lord repaid David vengeance, and Nabal, he got what came to him, that evil that he spewed out, it boomeranged back to him. And so this is your reminder that if you are in a position of authority, if you are a wife, you have the authority to decree life over your household. You have the authority to decree blessings in your life, in your enemy's life, in those who seek to harm you, and you will be rewarded for your loyalty. You will be rewarded for your goodness by the Lord. The Lord will make sure that you are taken care of. When you are doing the right thing, you will not When you're doing the right thing, the Lord will repay you for goodness. You don't have to worry about what other people are doing. It might seem like you're going through things that's unfair. You've been through trial after trial, but the Lord will repay you. He will reward you for doing the right thing. And those who did evil, they will get back what they have sown in this earth. It will not fall on you. So this is your encouragement to be brave to do the right thing, because she could have easily said, well, my husband said no, my hands is tied. You have the authority to do the thing that is right. You have the right to do the hard thing, even when you don't know what the outcome is going to be. Be brave, be confident, have good character, and put your trust in the Lord, and everything will be okay. Be blessed.